What job should marketing get done in a company?
Marketing really needs to tell the story of the mission, vision, values of what the company stands for and what they're trying to accomplish.
And then the outcome or desired benefit of telling that story would be that people can resonate with it, people can connect, or what would be the reason for why you think marketing's job is to tell that story?
The way that I see it, like when I'm working with clients, is that they confuse often sales and marketing and don't realize that they need to do the marketing side in order to accomplish the sales side, right? So for me, I'm always championing telling that story, attracting people in with your story, and then that helps to build that like no trust, that helps companies to get leads, to get partnerships. And the reason why I'm always focusing on leading with your values is because for me, that is it's like a magnet, right? It's like honey for bees. You want to attract the people who are aligned with your values and you want to repel everybody else. And so I feel like good marketing does that because then when you get to the point of having a sales conversation or a partnership conversation, then there's no confusion about whether or not you are aligned with that, whether it's a lead or a brand partnership or some other sort of conversation involving collaboration because they are, very aware of what you stand for. And then you don't have this like, oh, I didn't know that that person, is a supporter of whatever the thing is.
That's Christine Betchel. And to be honest, this episode shouldn't be. Not just for the fact that I felt like I got hit by a train and have been sick for the past few days, so this is hardly getting out, and even this intro is me being sick. But I never had an intention of recording a podcast episode with Christine. I connected with her on LinkedIn. She is in my area. And then because of some of her posts on social issues or different things around life that she had posted about, I wanted to connect with her. So we grabbed coffee. And after chatting with her and during that conversation, I quickly realized that this business coach / consultant knew more about marketing than I'd given her credit for. Before running her own consultancy, she spent 6 years as a paralegal in Brown County and is now also working as an executive assistant at NWTC for the last 3 years, alongside launching her consultancy around the same time about 3 years ago called Abundant Life Masterplan. I loved her takes throughout the episode on target audience, branding, and especially her takes on life. I hope you also enjoy her insights. Before we get back to the conversation, run the intro. Welcome to On Marketing, a show where we uncover what marketing is. I won't tell you what to think. I'll help you improve how you think about marketing and life. I'm Jordan Ogren, a marketing strategist by day and a podcast host by night. This was originally recorded on June 13th, 2025. All opinions shared in this podcast are the individual views of the hosts and guests, not those of their employees or associated organizations. This content is intended for informational purposes and should not be considered professional marketing or life guidance. Listeners act on the information provided at their own risk. Thank you for being here. Yeah, lack of awareness is definitely an issue that if you're not telling your story, you can come into it. But I want to take a few steps back. I love your kind of separation, right? Because so many people, and myself included, when I kind of first started, it's like sales, marketing, aren't they the same thing? And you even have people who are kind of director of sales and marketing, and they can kind of come maybe to the conversation or approaching it in a way that's more sales dominant. Versus to your point, I find marketing to and this wasn't defined by me, but someone defined it as like marketing should make sales easier. And that's everything that you're just talking about right now. But I want to maybe kind of deter from there to the story, because I really think the story is super interesting. And maybe in the work you do, talk to me about some of the things to avoid, things to double down on with stories. I already maybe know one of those because you said it, is like make sure it repels people. Like don't be so vanilla generic that people aren't like, oh, I feel passionate or I feel angry against it. But just give me kind of maybe in your work, how do you work through telling that story? What are things to avoid and what are things to like double down on?
When I'm working with a client, I typically tell them that because I see a lot of this where people want to speak to everybody. And when you're speaking to everyone, you're speaking to no one. So I want what and my coach actually told me this, when you are marketing whatever your offer is or whatever your company is selling, you want people, you want to build your community, and you want, when you get to that sales call, for them to have a full body yes. Like a heck yes, this is for me. I'm aligned with this. And so great marketing does that. I think of like the Nike commercial recently that I saw where they there were a bunch of female athletes who were black and brown, and they're like, just do it anyway kind of thing. And it really resonated. You could feel it in your body. And that's what I think your marketing should do. You want to be so narrowed into your message and who it serves and what values it aligns to, so that you are calling in the people that you want to serve. And then you ask the question about like what to avoid, and how that repels people that aren't aligned with you or people you wouldn't want to work with. An example of that for me is I used to, because this is what everyone used to tell us to do, talk about like serving the entrepreneur who is, you know, overworked or who is lacking clarity and things like that. I used that in my marketing. That was some of the copy I used. And then I learned that I was attracting people who didn't want to actually do the work in what I was helping them to build in their business. And so I had to pivot my language to call in people who were better aligned with the work that I'm trying to get them to do, which is to build, grow, scale purpose-driven businesses. And so in order for me to do that, I had to release the thought that I needed to use this generic language. And instead, I really honed in on who it is that I would love to work with. Like, I would work with them for free, even though I don't do free. I would work with them for free. And then I would speak to that person. One of my, I call her my internet friend, who actually is a sales coach, talks about speaking to the hero in your client or your potential customer. So then once I changed my language from this generic language to more of this very zoned in language about like purpose, values, high achieving, like using words like that, then I was attracting folks who I would want to work with. And then when I would get on that sales call, I didn't leave like, I don't even think I want to work with this person. It was just a matter of if they felt, aligned and wanted to move forward.
So I'm kind of taking away a little bit of this iterative process that maybe you start broad or you even start narrow, but then you learn because you take it to market or you have a business sales call with someone and you're like, oh, geez, I need to. So maybe because it's so, I can only imagine, context dependent, but what are some of the things that you do, questions, frameworks, mental models that can help a company start to get slightly more narrow or more focused? And maybe it's some of that question of like, if I was to work with someone for free, who would it be and why? And then that can get you closer. But is there anything that comes to your mind of like ways you've either helped or you've found value in kind of starting to narrow that story or narrowing who you're trying to reach?
I would say, okay, so I'm borrowing this from Coach Natalie Bullen. I don't know if she borrowed it from somebody else, but the question, and this was a few years ago, she basically was doing, she calls it giving from her overflow, right? Like she had so much abundance in her business that she did a free training for some of us who were just starting out in business. And what she said was, you need to take time, block it in your calendar, and sit down and think about who does my ideal, my, favorite person to work with. Who do they need to be? What do they need to do? And what do they need to have? So it's that be, do, have framework, because what she was finding was that she was getting people for her sales trainings that wanted to work with her, but they didn't have a team to implement anything that she was, working on. So I think it is a question, and this has worked for me as well. What does the person need to be? What do they need to do? What do they need to have? Because I've gotten on calls with people and asked, okay, do you have, let's say, do you have the capacity financially to invest in the systems that I'm going to need you to invest in order to make your operations more streamlined and more efficient? And if the answer is no, then I need to take a step back and think about, okay, what is in my marketing that is attracting people who are not coming coming to the table ready to be able to implement whatever it is that I'm teaching them, or whatever it is that I'm consulting them on. So I think that is a great framework to use, especially for people who are just speaking to this generic customer, to be able to think about, how do I get those people that I'm excited to show up on a call with, that I'm excited to work with, or that I'm excited to, if it's a product, purchase my product and then tell everybody else about it. You might not want certain people talking all over the internet about your product because they're problematic. So I think leading with that is important.
I love that. I've yet to hear that framework. I think I've kind of seen it or have thought of it in different framing, but I've never framed it in those three kind of steps or those three questions. And then again, I think it just keeps coming to, in my mind, back to this like learning. Like you learn like, oh, I need to have a team to implement it. And then you keep refining your ideal customer profile or whatever target audience, however you want to frame it. But maybe that leads into my final question around marketing. What have you personally maybe taking out of not just the work you do, but going to a very high level on marketing? What have you changed your mind on? It maybe is not 180, but just slightly pivoted on in the last 2, 3, 5, 1 year of like, I used to believe you need to have 100 pieces of content. I read Gary Vaynerchuk way too much. And now I believe you just need quality stuff. What comes to your mind of a foundational or even a tactical shift in marketing that you didn't believe recently that now you're thinking differently about?
Yes, and I think we may have even talked about this the last time we met. I used to believe that I needed to show up everywhere and often in order for people to, in order to, to be visible, in order to attract clients. And that meant purchasing courses on how to build Instagram. And I don't even like Instagram like that, like for business. And then it meant, spending a lot of time on Facebook scrolling to see what other people are posting and if my stuff matches theirs or whatever. And then within the last year, I met, I think she does personal branding. I can get you her name later, but Casey. And she had done this basically just out of curiosity, what works on LinkedIn. And so what she found over a period of months where she was tracking metrics, tracking impressions, all of that, was that it's quality over quantity. You don't have to have a post every single day. And that was something that shifted for me most recently. You just need to have at least a quality post weekly. And then that builds conversations, and those conversations are what is helping you to get those leads. But then also that you don't need to be showing up everywhere. Pick a place where you want to market your services, product, whatever, and master that. Then once you've mastered that, you would hope that you have enough budget to hire a team so that you can automate something and then move on to mastering something else. But I think really in the last 12 months, what has changed the game for me was picking one platform to market and really honing in on quality over quantity and not just churning out, because it was also repelling me from wanting to actually show up on social because I was so exhausted of trying to constantly think about content and what to post and this and that and looking at other people. So that gave me permission to not to like tunnel vision. I'm not worrying about anybody else. I'm worrying about who I want to serve and how do I want to connect with those people. And that has really opened a lot of opportunity up for me.
That's powerful. I think even outside of marketing, that you just don't need to be everywhere. I think sometimes we can get so pulled and pushed to just feel obligated to do stuff. And then even maybe the deeper thought that you're sharing is then like you don't even want to do it because you're like feeling like, oh, I have to be posting on here and there. So finding that platform, that place that your audience is, and you feel joyful in sharing weekly, regularly. And I love that because I recently listened to a podcast talking about podcasts that actually bi-weekly episodes do a little bit better than weekly. And that kind of like shook me. But
Wow.
which is not related, but semi-related, where a lot of people are posting daily. And it's like, maybe it's every other day, maybe it's once a week that actually drives more value to similarly, I would think like, oh, a weekly show is going to be more valuable. Well, then people don't have time to like consume it or if they're busy and all of that. So I think your point is so valuable. Sometimes it's better to slow down to put out better stuff than to just keep going fast and putting out mid, as the kids would say, stuff. So I love that. I love that.
Yes. Yeah, because to your point, when I was trying to figure out, okay, I need to post 3 times a day, and one post has to be this kind of post, and another post has to be this kind of post, it was like I felt like a influencer content creator, and I had to, in a great framing actually that Casey shared was, you're a business owner and you are selling to other businesses, whether it's small business, it might seem like B2C because they're not big corporations, but your customers are working their businesses. They're not on Facebook. They don't want to see that you are drinking this latte. So that was a great switch because then I was able to, because it didn't feel authentic to me anyways. It was like I was forcing it, and I'm not an influencer. I am a coach,
Oh,
consultant to
I
business
love it.
owners, and they don't care what I have for breakfast. They care about the transformation that I can provide in their business. And so that was really something that freed me from having to do that.
Beautifully said. That's a clip right there. I think that 30-second clip will definitely be used on social. I love that. So helpful. Now I think we can maybe shift to the more important conversation that I really enjoy talking about, the life side of things. Now, what do you see? And this is going to be only for Christine because everybody has their own North Star or guiding purpose with life. But what do you see as that purpose, or like what should we be aiming for in life?
For me, it is aiming to live into my purpose. And for me, I have over the years, it took years of iteration to figure out what exactly my purpose is. But really, I've realized recently in working with clients is that I am a catalyst for change. And so, as a visionary, as somebody who has a strategic, like strategy, relationship, really those things are in my top 5 Clifton strengths. That's what I'm great at. So really the purpose for me was figuring out what my zone of genius is and then how can I serve others in that way, because what comes easy to me doesn't come easy to other people. And so that really has helped me figure out what my purpose is. And then also part of that is inspiring people to do the thing that they think they can't do. And so through that, through my coaching and through my work with people, I have helped them to cultivate the courage to do the hard thing, to do the thing they think they can't do. And then that leads them to their purpose. And so I get to see this ripple effect, and it's super exciting because me living in my purpose allows for other people to find their purpose, lean into it, and then, own it and really truly live full out in their purpose.
What would you, aside from doing the tough things or the things we don't want to do, what would you give to someone who might say to you, Christine, I love that. I love how purpose driven you are, but I have no purpose, or I feel as if now, and this is like kind of like two different areas. There's like purposeless of like, I'm down and out and, I'm ready to just like end it all. That's not maybe where I'm going, but more so maybe on like the person who's doing well in business or is doing well in their career, but they're just like, and maybe this is me actually. And it's just like, I don't know, like if someone was to put a gun to my head and say, give me your purpose or I'll shoot you, I'd have to make up something because I just don't know what my purpose is aside from like helping people, which is just very generic. What would be some of the things you'd help someone that just said that to you kind of start on their journey? And obviously iteration and learning and that is baked into your story, which I love from the marketing, but what would be some of the things I could do or just one thing that would help me start to find my purpose aside from working with you, which I highly recommend everybody listening to do as well?
What I would tell you to do, honestly, and this is not mine, so I want to give ownership to the thought leader that created it, and that's Simon Sinek. And I heard this recently in his A Bit of Optimism podcast, but it truly resonated because that's how I figured out what my purpose was, actually, was to call your friends, not your family, not people who are going to tell you what you want to hear because they love you. Call your friends and ask them, hey, why are you friends with me? And that's how I found my purpose. Actually, I called one of my besties, somebody who I met in college, and we've been friends for 20 years. And I was like, okay, so why are you friends with me? And she's like, we were talking about some business situation that I was going through, and I was venting to her, and she's like, you know, that is why I love you. And that is why I stay connected to you, is because you are unapologetically yourself. You show up the way that you are. You talk the talk that you talk in the way that you do it. You don't sugarcoat, and you inspire me because you do things that I could only dream of. And I was like, oh, so I've just been existing all this time, not realizing what my purpose is, thinking I got to figure out my purpose. I'm mid-career. What is my purpose? And really it is a friend, not your wife, because she's gonna she's gonna tell you, Jordan.
Yep.
She's gonna care too much about your feelings. It's got to be somebody who will tell you the truth. And I think it's also interesting because it's not what you do. It's not those like it's not your job. It's not your title. It's not the contributions you make to whatever capitalistic, endeavor that you're doing. It's not how much money you have in the bank account. It is truly how does your existence affect the people within your realm? I feel like that's how you figure out what your purpose is. And that's different for everybody. I one of my children is very good at questioning everything. I call him my little professor. He's my only boy. And I'm like, you know what? You make me question myself, and you make me think deeper about why I do the things I do, because he literally questions everything. And I don't know if he's figured out whether that's his purpose or not, but I think if he follows that with curiosity, he might be onto something.
I love that, Christine, because honestly, as I kind of position the question as I have no purpose, I actually have gone through that, but I didn't ask that exact question using the jobs to be done framework. I kind of framed people as like, why as a friend, why did you hire me? Now, we don't hire like friends naturally, so kind of like to what you're talking about, but I do think at times it'd be like, well, I have options. Every time I get a coffee, I have options of 10, 5, however many friends, and I'm hiring you for some specific reason. You might make me feel warm inside. And a few friends told me you help me think differently, or you show things at which I didn't see. So I love that you kind of reaffirmed that. I don't feel like it's my total kind of where I'm trying to go or what is but like it's helped me realize more and more of like, this is what I need to live into, because this is, to your point, what people who have vested interests, but to your point of like parents or spouses, they're going to tell you what you need to hear. And they've told me that so many times where it's like, oh, I need to double down on this kind of thinking differently, or I help people think differently. So I really love that. And I kind of framed it as if I have never done that. So it's so fun to hear you answer with that type of a solution, because I'm like, oh, I've deployed that, but maybe I need to do a few more friends or ask a few more people, like, why are we here right now? Like, why am I your friend? And then seeing if there's different kind of purpose answers or purpose-esque things that I can pull from that. So I love that.
Yeah, and honestly, from our previous conversation, I would say that I left the table with that same sentiment. Like, he's got me thinking differently about quite a few different topics that we chatted about, whether it was business, marketing, the meaning of life, whatever.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I would say keep being curious about that, and then that will lead you closer and closer to what you eventually come to realize is your purpose. But then also, I think that people confuse purpose with career, and I separate those two. When I'm telling my children, when I'm like coaching my children on their life choices, I've got one who's a sophomore in college at a University of Wisconsin college, and I didn't tell her to go into some program to discover your purpose. Your purpose is not related to how you make money, but how you make money should be able to create the circumstances or create the opportunity for you to live into your purpose. So you want to make sure that you are making enough funds to fund your purpose, but it shouldn't be, because I feel like when I was in high school, a lot of people said, "Oh, just go to liberal arts college and take some classes and you'll find your purpose." And that didn't work out well for millennials. And now we've got all this student loan debt. So I'm just
100.
like, you don't need to be paid for your purpose, but eventually you will find a path where you get to live in your purpose and be well compensated for it. And I think that's what I'm championing my kids, and that's how I kind of have fumbled through my adult life to realize that it all eventually falls into place. You just have to continue to live and you'll get there.
I love that. Yeah, it is definitely a distinction between the two of what you do and your purpose. But I do feel like it's so nice in my work in marketing. I can kind of imbue my purpose of asking people very unique questions that make them think differently about marketing. So it is this kind of nice place where you can eventually get to where they merge. So the work you do is leveraging your purpose, your natural gifts, all of that kind of wrapped into one. So I really like, though, you touching on that distinction, because I think whether purpose or passion, we've been kind of sold a false dream to chase your passion, and usually the person telling you that made millions in oil, and it's just like, I'm not sure if you followed your passion in oil, but maybe their purpose is to give advice or to help others, and now they can use, to your point, their platform, their business that enables them to be more purpose-led. So I love that, and continually living and being curious, to your final point, is so important to kind of living into your purpose, finding it, all that. Final question here, Christine, because I could chat to you forever about marketing and life. There's a lot changing, whether if you look at AI, politics, there's so many things that are changing or just feeling very turbulent. Going out 15 years from today, what do you hope we still have, or maybe something we just briefly had, but maybe before the pandemic or before certain things we've lost it? What do you hope we either focus on, we're doing more of, or we continually do in that 15-year future?
That is surprisingly easy to answer, because I've been grappling with this kind of AI question because I have children, and that is relationships. Being able to be in community with each other in real life. We talk about AI girlfriends and this crisis of the lonely young male. And I started to really worry for my son who's 15 because I'm like, this is why we're seeing so much violence. This is why we're seeing so many things happening in society is because people are lonely. So 15 years from now, I hope that we leverage AI for the things that make sense to make our lives more efficient, more easy, so that we can free up our time to be in relationship with each other because humans need human connection. So my hope is that we continue to show up in real life, in community, and have just really meaningful, deep relationships with each other.
And I think the fun thing is our relationship has been meta of that, where we met in person. So it's not kind of avoiding digital, but it's, really putting that in person, that kind of connections, relationships, not only online at the
Yeah.
forefront, because it's so easy sometimes just to live behind the computer. And I have that challenge of shooting off LinkedIn DMs and trying to do virtual chats. But it's like, man, there's something different about sitting across from someone, feeling their energy, seeing how they drink their coffee, seeing what they got for coffee. There's just so much you can grasp that in person. I think with the pandemic, we're like slowly relearning that, but I think AI could be a huge impediment to that. So I think we need to be intentional, or else we'll all be just, to your point, having AI friends, which maybe is
Or
great, but
therapists.
yeah. And I feel, to your point, there's just so much value in just connectivity of the people and the energy and the vibes that are created in person. So I am pulling for that future as well, Christine.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your time and your wisdom. This was a lovely conversation.
Yes, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
And this is the end of the podcast. What one idea or topic of conversation stood out to you today? Write it down, share it with a friend, post on social. The main thing is take action. That's how we go from theory to mastery. We need to practice. We need to put it into practice. Thank you for listening and being here, and I hope you tune in next week.